All right, it's Wednesday, and we are back with another video on the Bible Project. Tonight we're talking about the image of God, and another one of those deals where, again, the reason we like these videos so much, they do a great job of connecting from the beginning of the Bible all the way to the end and everything in between with these topics or these subjects. So get right into it. We'll see you on Zoom at 6:20 if you're catching this before that time. Um, and you can also catch the Bible Project video on this topic before we meet as well. But we'll see you on Zoom at 6:20. When we think about this, it's hard to comprehend or understand, right? Um, the image of God. But in biblical times, you're probably used to people proclaiming to be the image of God. Um, Most everyone in those times lived under the rule of a king, and these kings proclaimed themselves to be God's image on earth, having the authority to carry out the will of the gods. That's why they were in power, right? You think of Egypt, right? Or maybe even Rome, Caesar. Caesar thought literally that he was a god. He was going to have it declared that he was Caesar and he is God. So these kings would also create these idols, which we know what these are, right? Whether of wood or stone or gold or whatever precious metal they had, uh, they were these physical embodiments of gods on earth, or on earth, or again, images of God. Israel, though, was the one nation that did not view their kings as God, right? Remember, even when they did make these um, images, they were, obviously not supposed. They knew they were not supposed to, right? They were also not allowed to create idols or images of their gods, which is what I was just referring to, because God had already made uh, images of Himself. Okay, so we go again all the way back to the beginning of the Bible, Genesis 1. Remember last week with the Holy Spirit, we were in the very beginning, the first three verses. Not quite that far ahead, but we're still in Genesis 1 with this subject. And we see God is the creator, He's the king of the earth. So, king and creator, He has authority over all creation, obviously, and He defines what is good. And He's the only one, and He's the only king. So, one of the first things He does, though, is create mankind, and He gives them all authority to rule over creation by making them in His image. Are you familiar with these verses? If not, you can check out Genesis 1, 26 and 27. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, in our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, over the livestock, over all the earth, and over all the creatures that move along the ground." So God created man in His image. In the image of God, He created him. Male and female, He created them. So in what ways are we made in God's image? It can, again, back to the beginning, it can seem kind of hard to comprehend um, that we were created in God's image, right? Um, but it's through our entire self. We reflect the image of God. We will never be totally like God, obviously, because we're human, right? And we mess up, and we'll get to that more in a second. But we have the ability to reflect His character. So at a time when the task of acting like the physical embodiment of God um, and rule over all creation like um, these other kings, that's not what we're talking about. God gave this task to mankind. So how are we supposed to rule on this earth? How are we supposed to express this? How are we supposed to show this image of God? And the image of God in the Bible um, just is the means of cultivating the earth, harnessing its raw potential, moving creation forward. So back in Genesis at this time, it was simply growing food, growing a family, growing a community. And of course, that just progresses as time and technology continue on. That's it's just day-to-day activities, right? We still have to grow food. We don't each do it individually. Um, we all still grow families. We all still grow communities. We're growing, civilization as we move forward. But these day-to-day activities that mankind has been doing for thousands of years. And that's the way we are able to do that. So, just as often as people are good rulers um, and good stewards of the earth, we're also terrible sometimes, and we spread sin and suffering. We create good, we also create evil. And again, God gave us the choice back in Genesis. They refer to this in the video as the human condition. We are good, God made us, but we also have the choice to do good or evil. And I like the quote that they use in there because we have made so many bad choices um, that we are mediocre rulers making a mess of things. Pretty good way to put it. Not a big selling point for our ruling ability or our world, I guess, but that is what we are because we're human, right? So Jesus is sent at this point. Again, we're moving through kind of through the Bible with this topic since we're making a mess of things, as we know. And again, this sounds a lot like last week when we talked about the Holy Spirit. Um, Similar kind of way that we move through the Bible with it. But Jesus comes and he is the new human. He is the perfect image of God. He is God here on earth, right? And so, how does he do this? How does he express? How does he show this? He does it through serving. We know that. He does it by seeking what is best for others. He does this by loving, not just loving his friends. He does it by loving his enemies. He confronts sin and death. Thankfully, the image of God um, definition extends further um, than the definition that we've kind of made of it. In sending Christ to earth to live as a man, God shows us what it's truly like to live a life in the image of God. So we have this example, Christ example, um, and we see that this life, servitude, and goodness to others, no matter what they do to us, is what we should be like. Jesus confronts all the evil and destruction that we have created as rulers of this earth. He takes all that on, all that sin, and he died on the cross and took all that with him. So it's through that his life and his death and his resurrection, Jesus provides us an answer to the question of what the image of God should look like and what we should look like, um, and that we should be filled with love. So he is the image of God. So people should try to be filled with the presence of Jesus. And they mentioned Paul as he lists what we should do. Love. We should be full of love and joy and peace, patience, kindness, goodness, integrity, gentleness, and self-control. We should try to become those things to be God's image reflected in this world. So, and again, from beginning to end, the very end of the Bible, there's this picture of what we see is a new earth. The world is renewed. God is on the throne, and servants all around. All of those saved rule as he rules over all that have been saved in this new creation, and they are all ruling with Jesus as their leader and as their guide. So again, we see um, finally living the way God had originally intended it back in Genesis. So kind of a similar frame by frame look to last week with the Holy Spirit. We see these, hear these things. We don't always see them. We've read that verse. We know the image of God is mentioned in Genesis. We probably have read over the Holy Spirit being mentioned in verse 3. It just is not usually the focus of what we're looking at because we're usually talking about the creation story and something else along those lines. So interesting how they tie this all together. Pretty cool um, video and pretty cool thing to think about, again, from Genesis all the way to Revelation. So join us on Zoom at 6:20, and we will be in church Sunday morning. We're back in Sunday school if you have not heard. So be here at 9:15 in the new youth room back downstairs. We'll see you Sunday. Bye.